There have been numerous times throughout history when someone has made a discovery without recognizing the truly paradigm-shifting nature of what they'd found. In 1914, something similar took place on the island of Java, Indonesia. At that time, the country was a colony of the Dutch Empire, and colonists dotted the island on farms cut out of the jungle. Early in the year, one such colonist decided to leave his farm and set out on foot into the surrounding jungle after hearing a story from locals about a lost palace constructed by a mythical king sometime long ago. It did not take long for the colonist to come across something incredible. There, deep in the jungle, he discovered an enormous hill with what appeared to be a series of steps leading to its summit. At the top of these steps, he found a huge collection of heavy rectangular blocks scattered in every direction, long since overgrown with foliage. Could this be the remains of the mythical palace he had come looking for? Returning to his farm, the colonist promptly sent a letter to the government of Holland describing his discovery and requesting a professional expedition to explore the site further. The description appeared in a 1914 edition of the Dutch Report on the Department of Antiquities, causing quite a stir in the colonists' home country. What was this site, many people wondered, and who built it? Furthermore, what was its purpose, and what else might be hidden under the ground? Despite this interest, the Dutch government never did get around to sending an expedition to examine the site further. By 1949, Indonesia had fully gained its independence from Holland, and the site had faded from memory. And there the story might have ended, if not for 3 local Java residents who rediscovered the site while wandering around in the jungle in 1979. Coming across the mysterious hill's graveyard of stone blocks, they quickly reported their finding to local officials, who identified the site as a hill known as Gunung Padang. Within weeks, the Indonesian government had dispatched teams from the Directorate for Heritage Protection and Management and the National Center of Archaeology to explore the site further. In short order, researchers set about mapping the site and documenting its archaeological features. First, there were the stone blocks which the Dutch colonists had come across all those years before, a near endless number of them, most about 5 feet in length and weighing upwards of 550 pounds. Some were much bigger, weighing over 1,300 pounds. Have you ever wanted to drive off in the most desired electric SUV in the world? With this new eco-friendly Tesla Model X Plaid, eco-friendly has never felt or looked so good. How would you feel if you won one of these? Luckily for you, you may find out, as we're partnering with Omaze, who are offering you the chance to win this eco-friendly Tesla Model X Plaid and also support a great cause. You can enter for your chance to win this amazing vehicle by going to omaze.com/universe. There, you can get as many entries as you want, and with your donations, you support the cause of Reverb. Reverb has been leading the green music movement since 2004 and partners with artists, festivals, and venues to reduce their environmental footprints. You can find the entry link in the description of our video. The winner will be announced at the beginning of December on the Omaze website. Good luck to everyone! Researchers quickly realized that these blocks were not made by humans, but rather naturally forming andesite rock forged by a volcano. This meant that somebody had transported them to the top of this hill, some 300 feet above the valley below. But who and why? As they continued their investigation, researchers discovered that the blocks were not scattered about randomly, but in fact organized into rectangular stone enclosures and rock mounds. Whoever had brought them up there had used the blocks for construction. In fact, it appeared that 5 separate terraces covered the hill over an area of 3,000 square feet, all linked by an ascending staircase of 370 steps. Instead of using radiocarbon dating to determine the age of the site, researchers used simple guesswork, estimating it to have been built somewhere between 2500 to 1500 BCE by measuring the chips on the blocks. Accordingly, they concluded that while the site was certainly interesting, it was nothing earth-shattering, merely the remains of an ancient settlement not unlike so many others found all around the world. And this was how Gunung Padang was remembered until 2011, when everything changed. In his work as a senior geologist at the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, Danny Hilman Natawijaya came across many interesting things, but nothing piqued his interest quite like the hill known as Gunung Padang. It was the peculiar shape of the hill that got to him, the way it stood out from the adjacent landscape. It's not like the surrounding topography, which is very much eroded, he explained. This looks very young. It looked artificial. In 2011, Natawijaya would get the chance to follow his curiosity when he was chosen to lead a team of geologists from the Institute of Sciences, as well as archaeologists from the University of Indonesia, in a government-sponsored project examining the site. At first, their findings were unremarkable. Initial radiocarbon dating done on soils underneath the stone blocks at the surface produced dates of 1500 to 500 BCE, similar to the original estimate done in 1979. But as the team began to dig deeper, what they found shocked them. Using tubular drills that brought up cores of earth and stone, they quickly obtained evidence of numerous human-made structures buried beneath the surface. More astonishingly, the deeper they went, the older the material they brought up became. Beneath the surface, researchers found 3 distinct layers. While the first was only 2,500 to 3,500 years old, as they had initially determined, the second layer, about 10 feet below the surface, was dated at some 7,500 to 8,300 years old, and the third, nearly 50 feet down, was as much as 28,000 years old. How could this be possible? Even at 7,500 years, this would date the site at 3,000 years before the ancient Sumerians and 4,500 years before the ancient Egyptians. And at 28,000 years old, well, that was something else entirely. Something before the last ice age, many thousands of years before human civilization is said to have existed. Quickly, the team expanded their research, utilizing ground-penetrating radar and seismic tomography to more extensively map what was buried under their feet. Doing so, they discovered that the second layer contained another arrangement of rectangular blocks, organized in a matrix structure, while the third layer contained additional rock structures, including what appeared to be large underground cavities and chambers. It seemed that the blocks on the surface were only the start of Gunung Padang's construction. As one geologist on the team put it, what is previously seen as just surface building, it's going down, and it's a huge structure. Natawijaya and his team reiterated this in a report they released on their findings, declaring, "Our studies prove that the structure does not cover just the top, but also wrap around the slopes, covering about 15 hectares area at least. The structures are not only superficial, but rooted into greater depth. In fact, its exposure clearly shows that the youngest construction is built on top of an older, more sophisticated cultural rock layer." In other words, Gunung Padang was not a hill at all, but rather a sort of terraced pyramid, a series of layers built up over history, one settlement on top of another, thousands or tens of thousands of years into the past. Was this possible? And if so, who was building this type of construction that far in the past, before modern science tells us human civilization even officially began? Could Gunung Padang really contain a record of the oldest civilization ever found? A discovery which would totally rewrite the history books? Natawijaya believed he had an answer. The geophysical evidence is unambiguous. Gunung Padang is not a natural hill, but a man-made pyramid, and the origins of construction here go back long before the end of the last ice age. Since the work is massive even at the deepest levels and bears witness to the kinds of sophisticated construction skills that were deployed to build the pyramids of Egypt or the largest megalithic sites of Europe, I can only conclude that we're looking at the work of a lost civilization. It's crazy, but it's data. With the potential of a world-changing discovery on their soil, the Indonesian government immediately jumped on board, pouring money into the project and lavishing researchers with state-of-the-art equipment, while calling up members of the Indonesian military to help with excavation. The country's president, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, called the work at Gunung Padang of important value for humanity, and even had a helipad built at the top of the hill so he could visit and see the progress for himself. And yet, it was not all positive for Natawijaya and his research team. Because their discovery was so groundbreaking, it quickly became the subject of much controversy. That history was being rewritten was, as Natawijaya described, not at all what my colleagues in the world of archaeology expected or wanted to hear. Almost instantly, the archaeological establishment in Indonesia lined up in opposition. They lobbied political authorities and agitated locally, demanding that the project be stopped. On the surface, their criticism was of the team's methods and findings, allegations that proper excavation procedures were not being followed, and results were being constructed based on biased interpretations. They also complained about the large budget which had been devoted to the project, contending that they needed the money for their own more important work. But as time passed, the true nature of their opposition became clear. Despite having conducted no research of their own, the archaeological establishment asserted that they knew the remains at Gunung Padang could not be older than 5,000 years, simply because it was illogical to suggest that a civilization existed that far in the past. It could not be possible because if it was, it would challenge the records of human civilization contained within the history books. In other words, their true problem was that they were unwilling to adjust their thinking, unable to consider that what they knew about human history might be wrong. Natawijaya was under no illusions about the forces he was up against. I've already got myself into a lot of hot water with this. My case is a solid one, based on good scientific evidence, but it's not an easy one. I'm up against deeply entrenched beliefs. To his critics, he proclaimed, I don't deny that the megaliths at the surface are less than 5,000 years old, but I suggest they were put here because Gunung Padang has been recognized as a sacred place since time immemorial. It's the deepest layers of the structure, at between 12,000 and more than 20,000 years old, that are the most important. They have potentially revolutionary implications for our understanding of history, and I think it's vital that we be allowed to investigate them properly. The government of Indonesia agreed. Despite vigorous opposition, research at Gunung Padang continued with government support, and as it did, the discoveries got even more amazing. As the jungle got cleared away to facilitate excavation, researchers uncovered numerous relics all throughout the area. Jewelry and ceramics, tools and household goods, weapons. They even uncovered never-before-seen coins, which they dated to 5200 BCE, an astonishing date since modern science insisted that the world's first coins appeared around 600 BCE. Further, they discovered that the cement mixture used to hold the giant blocks of Gunung Padang together was composed of a combination of clay, silica, and iron. This suggested that iron melting technology had been known about many thousands of years in the past. Impossible, according to mainstream science, since the Iron Age didn't start until 1201 BCE. But there was more than that. As Natawijaya and his team continued to work, another group of scientists arrived, determined to examine something else they'd heard about. According to local legend, the blocks at Gunung Padang give off a kind of mysterious energy, making it a place where, for as long as anyone could remember, people traveled to meditate. In fact, Gunung Padang in the ancient local language means mountain of enlightenment. Was there any truth to this legend? Studying the idea further using modern equipment, researchers found that indeed the blocks emitted a relatively high frequency at levels which, curiously, have correspondence with the standard Western musical scale. We have explored the secrets of frequency and vibration in detail on this channel, from Greek philosopher Pythagoras and his vibrational machine, to the acoustic levitation of Buddhist monks, to Nikola Tesla and his famous words. If you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. The unusual frequencies produced by the blocks at Gunung Padang seem to suggest that its builders knew about these secrets many thousands of years in the past, secrets which still elude us today. Coins before coins, iron before the Iron Age, secrets of frequency and vibration that we still don't understand. It seemed that Gunung Padang was not just proof of an extremely old civilization, but, as Natawijaya put it, proof of an intelligent and extremely advanced civilization. Could it be, as Natawijaya asserted, that everything we've been taught about the origins of civilization may be wrong? The answer to this question never came. At the climax of a discovery set to change our understanding of human history, disaster struck for Natawijaya and his team. In 2014, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono's second term as president of Indonesia, the maximum allowed under the constitution of the country, came to an end, and Joko Widodo was elected as his replacement. Unlike his predecessor, Widodo sided with the archaeological establishment on the issue of Gunung Padang. On October 1, 2014, research at the site was halted. Natawijaya and his team told to pack up and go home, to forget their work which appeared so crucial, so groundbreaking. To this day, Widodo remains president, and research at Gunung Padang remains shut down, the mystery unsolved, history incomplete. Could an advanced ancient civilization really have existed thousands of years before the ancient Egyptians or Sumerians? Before even the last ice age? And if so, who were they? And what happened to them? Some have an answer. In the middle of the 19th century, a British-American antiquarian named Augustus Le Plongeon burst into public consciousness when he came forward with an unbelievable assertion. Le Plongeon had spent his life researching and documenting ancient Mayan culture on the Yucatan Peninsula. During this time, he claimed, he had become privy to an ancient Mayan holy book known as the Popol Vuh. Upon translation, Le Plongeon declared the book revealed that the people of the Yucatan were in fact descendants of an older civilization from a lost continent, one which thrived many thousands of years in the past, before dramatically sinking into the Atlantic Ocean and being lost forever. According to Le Plongeon, the continent was called Mu. The idea of this lost continent of Mu was picked up on by a man named James Churchward, who wrote a series of books in the 1920s and 30s, telling a story every bit as incredible as that of Le Plongeon. According to Churchward, during his time as a British soldier in colonial India in the late 1800s, he had befriended a high-ranking local priest who showed him a set of ancient tablets written in a lost language which only the priest and 2 other people on earth could understand. After some cajoling, Churchward convinced the priest to teach him the language so that he could read the tablets for himself. When he did, he discovered a story of a lost continent, referred to as simply the place where man first appeared, Mu. According to Churchward, this continent was home to an advanced civilization of some 64 million inhabitants, which thrived between 50,000 and 12,000 years ago, before being struck by a cataclysm and completely obliterated in almost a single night, covered by 50 millions of square miles of water. Unlike Le Plongeon, Churchward placed Mu in the Pacific Ocean and even described its dimensions as 5,000 miles from the east to west and 3,000 miles from north to south, larger than the continent of South America. More incredibly, Churchward professed that the survivors of Mu's cataclysmic end fled across the world and founded the ancient civilizations of Egypt, Greece, Central America, India, Easter Island, and elsewhere, which he believed explained the similar and recurring stories, symbols, and architecture which appear across cultures who never met. Until, in recent times, new evidence forced opinions to begin to change. Much like the stories of the lost continent of Atlantis, both Le Plongeon and Churchward's stories of Mu received derision from mainstream science, which portrayed the continent as a ridiculous myth, untrue and unworthy of discussion for many years. Until, in recent times, new evidence forced opinions to begin to change. In 1986, a diver named Kiichiro Arataki was looking for a good spot to observe hammerhead sharks off the coast of Yonaguni-jima, an island in Japan's southwest corner, some 70 miles from Taiwan, when he suddenly noticed something stunning on the ocean floor beneath him. There, at a depth of over 100 feet, was what appeared to be a massive stone pyramid, well over 100 feet long and nearly as wide. What was this monument? Arataki wondered. Immediately, a team led by Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist from the University of Ryukyu, headed to the site to examine the alleged monument. As they began their research, Kimura and his team quickly noticed what they believed to be numerous structures at the site. Not only a pyramid, but a retaining wall, a road, gates, and stairways and drainage canals, all laid out at perfect right angles and marked by tools and strategically placed holes. It was clear to the team that the site must have been made by humans. Many in the scientific establishment disagreed with this assessment, asserting that everything which had been found was naturally occurring, formed coincidentally by the ocean tides. But then, Kimura and his team began to discover carvings in the rock of a giant turtle and other animals, people, even a face that looked like the heads of Easter Island. Surely, this too could not be coincidence. For his part, Kimura believed that the site, which had come to be known as the Yonaguni Monument, was thousands of years old, from a time when the land on which it was built was above water, before it was submerged and lost. At once, many made the connection. The Yonaguni Monument looked like the remnants of a lost civilization. If the legendary lost continent of Mu really did sink into the Pacific Ocean, as James Churchward had suggested, could the Yonaguni Monument be the outskirts of this lost continent? Of course, mainstream science said no. The Yonaguni Monument was not part of the lost continent of Mu, and in fact, the lost continent of Mu could not have existed at all because human civilization did not exist that far in the past. And yet, something else emerged in the years after the discovery of the Yonaguni Monument, which once again proved mainstream science wrong. In 1963, a sweeping survey was conducted in the southeastern region of Turkey, which included a site known as Göbekli Tepe, or Belly Hill. There, surveyors found broken slabs of limestone at the top of the hill, but assumed they were from an abandoned medieval cemetery. So they made a note and moved on, like researchers at Gunung Padang in 1979, not realizing the true importance of what they'd found. The site would be forgotten until 1994, when a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt came across a 1963 report on Göbekli Tepe while working on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the region, and decided to go see the hill for himself. From the first moment he saw the rounded top of Bailey Hill rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape, he knew. Only man could have created something like this, he proclaimed. It was clear right away this was a gigantic Stone Age site. By 1995, Schmidt had begun research at Göbekli Tepe with a team of archaeologists, and almost immediately, what they found shook the foundations of the scientific world. Buried just beneath the surface were a series of megaliths up to 18 feet tall and weighing as much as 50 tons, arranged in circles and covered in carvings of abstract symbols and animals: foxes, lions, bulls, snakes, and insects. More unbelievably, carbon dating put the site as from between 9600 to 8200 BCE, predating Stonehenge by at least 5,000 years, and meaning that Göbekli Tepe contained the world's oldest known megaliths. As research continued through the 90s and 2000s, even more incredible findings were discovered. Using ground-penetrating radar, at least 20 smaller stone circles were identified deep below the earth, which Schmidt believed would prove to be far older than those already excavated. If true, this would push creation of the site back before the last ice age. Though Schmidt died in 2014, research continued on at Göbekli Tepe, and the revelations did not stop. As researchers dug deeper, they discovered evidence of year-round settlement deep below the ground: houses, grinding tools for grain, cisterns, and channels for collecting rainwater. This meant that Göbekli Tepe was not just a monument, but an ancient human settlement, a civilization older than any on record. To this day, research is ongoing, and many are wondering what might yet be found at the site. As of 2021, only 5% of the site had been excavated. Moreover, many are wondering what else might be found across the region. Already, archaeologists have found at least a dozen similar sites near Göbekli Tepe, seeming to suggest that whoever this ancient civilization was, they were spread throughout the area. But no matter what they find in the future, the point which has already been made is clear. Simply, human civilization goes back beyond the date long proclaimed as the starting point by mainstream science. When they say that the Yonaguni Monument or Gunung Padang cannot be evidence of an ancient lost civilization simply because they know that human civilization did not exist that far back, Göbekli Tepe shows that they actually have no idea how far back human civilization goes. Recognizing this, the question is not so much whether a civilization could have existed deep in the past and built something like Gunung Padang, but rather, if they did exist, who were they? And where did they go? Could they really have been the inhabitants of a lost continent called Mu? One geological fact which is uncontroversial is that Indonesia was not always the collection of islands it is today. 10,000 years or so in the past, when the Earth's sea level was 400 feet lower, Indonesia was a landmass connected to the Asian subcontinent known as Sundaland. Local legend says that Gunung Padang was built by the king of the Sundaland Empire, before this empire sank beneath the ocean. Some in modern times suggest that, due to its high elevation, Gunung Padang could have been the high point of this ancient empire, until the Earth's ice caps melted at the end of the last ice age and flooded the Earth, turning Indonesia into islands. There is another story told by some of the indigenous peoples of Indonesia, as well as the Philippines. It tells of a great flood which rose up sometime in the distant past and consumed the land, leaving only one human couple alive. This couple climbed a mountain to survive before the gods eventually sent a great fire which burned so brightly it evaporated the flood water from the earth, leaving the couple to repopulate the earth. If the story sounds familiar, that's because it is. From Indonesia to the biblical story of Noah's Ark and beyond, nearly every culture around the world has a story about a great flood. Perhaps this recurring flood story is actually the story of the destruction of the continent of Mu. Today, historians assert that all human civilization began after the last ice age ended. But perhaps this ice age is not the starting point, but the dividing line, the point at which previous advanced human civilization was destroyed by the melting ice caps and lost beneath the ocean waves. Maybe evidence of these civilizations remains hidden somewhere in the ocean to this day, waiting to be found. What is clear at this point is that human civilization is older than previously admitted by mainstream science. Whether you call it Mu or Atlantis or something else altogether, the only thing left to do is find out more. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and if you're new, hit subscribe and the bell next to it for future notifications.